Hello. So I'm just waiting for a couple of people to hop on here. We'll hope my camera cooperates. Just trying to put on some music. Okay, so if you're here, let me know that you're here. Say hey. I want to do this again. I'm new with these. All right, so a few things that I want to talk about for 2021 are, well, I've written down a whole list of things that we can talk about in terms of like times, dates, but I really want for you guys to do your best to continue to fall out of step with time. I've talked about this a little bit on my YouTube channel, um, how time is sort of like becoming like nonlinear, and we have more access to, the multiverse through time as a linear construct sort of dissolving. So that's really interesting. That's something to pay attention to. And so, I was talking to one of my clients today who is really fascinated with the science of complexity. And, there's like simple systems, right? And then there's complex systems. And there comes a point where complexity just becomes a little bit more chaotic. And I think that that's one of the words that I would use to describe 2021 is chaotic. And I would describe 2021 as a good year to practice flexibility and adaptability and resilience. And so, chances are, if you are watching this at any point in time, you have really gone through a lot just in this one life. So, chances are you're pretty fucking resilient already. And so perhaps consider that to be training for what we're going through now. So, I perceive that, and really, I don't want this to scare anyone. Hopefully, this is just sort of like already, pretty evident that we are in somewhat of a war over consciousness, information, and frequency. So, like, your job in all of this is to make sure that what is happening out here does not influence or affect your own personal frequency if you can. And of course, if something bumps up against it, then do your best to work with that aspect of you and to continue to use the things that are going on as like platforms for your own healing and your own progression and your own development. Okay. So, as we know, there's a few things when we come into 2021 that I think are pretty interesting. And they sort of like set the tone for what we're experiencing, in January. There's a lot that sort of sets the tone. So there's a North Node in Gemini, which means the polarity is very strong. And so I really invite you, for your own sanity and strength, to find yourself in the center somewhat of these polarities. And so, yeah, so I guess like there's a lot of polarity, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of divide. And the people that don't lose themselves in the like who aren't so easily swayed by the divisions are going to do pretty well from my perspective. Um, I think that Gemini is curious as an energy, and so that's a really good way to sort of approach 2021 is with a certain sense of curiosity. I would also like to just put out there that with the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius, which we can look at Sagittarius as the guru on the mountain, or, we can look at that as like the academic or the travel industries, right? And so we can also look at that as belief systems. So we want to go a little bit more towards the North Node. We don't want to like leave the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and sort of divorce ourselves from our spiritual center, which can be thought of a lot with in terms of Sagittarius. Is very mystical, spiritual. So I don't think we want to like divorce ourselves from that, but we do want to take a look at our belief systems. I think it's really important to be mindful of the presences that are working to manage your perception around things. Like I kind of had this like ping or like insight that, the quantum computers are now on. So there is definitely like an information war. And so there's tons of misinformation everywhere you look. There's tons of, I mean, everywhere, like Neptune and Pisces rules over the media. So, my recommendation is to just continue to not buy into what the media is telling you, like as a general rule. And, the South Node in Sagittarius has to do with our belief systems. So if you're not questioning what you perceive and believe, then that's, that's going to be a challenge, I think, as we move forward in 2021. It's good to not be so rigid and to question what you think that you know for a fact. Like, I think that, some of our facts could shift and change. And, um, so you definitely want to stay curious, stay open, and to really be mindful of what is trying to pull you into all of these various boxes. So there is that. And the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius are both being squared by Neptune, which is, deception in the media, but it's also like spiritual transcendence, but it's also escapism or like wanting to check out. And so I think that like, this is maybe just like an opening invitation to check in with yourself, perhaps rather than checking out. So, really being mindful of escapist patterns of behavior, and really allow yourself to go into the depths of your soul. Like, if you've always known that you have a connection to that and to the all that is, there's never been a better time than when things are uncertain to go within, figure out your own truth, come into your center of being. And since the North Node is in Gemini, I think that it's really important as well to do some breath work. So I posted in the group not too long ago about Wim Hof Method and how I've been doing that really regularly this year and how it's been super, super helpful for me, just to feel even more empowered and like emotionally centered. And it's free. It's on YouTube. You can just like go look it up. And there's a couple of different channels. I'll write them down. Hang on. For breath work, Wim Hof Method. He has his own channel. And then I'll look at, hang on one sec. Let me write this down. So there's Wim Hof Method. There's, let's see. There's Medit, Rama, and then there's Gaia Meditations. So if you find that the ones on his channel kind of bother you, because they kind of bother me. Like there are some other ones on this channel. You can really begin to like open up and to, activate this space where your soul and your DNA sort of connect with each other. So, um, the other thing that I would like to, sort of like open to with the North Node in Gemini is sort of like understanding that there is no one size fits all for anything. So, wherever that shows up in handling anything, be it a health related issue or in being, in handling the way that somebody goes about doing something. Like, I think in general, if there's like this rule of like, you have to do this and you have to do that, that is a one size fits all sort of like blanket. And one of the things that I've discovered this year is that there are so many different kinds of people on this planet, so many different kinds of beings, right? We'll get into the alien piece here in a little bit, but there's so many different kinds of beings. And I think that like really like nurturing and fostering with Uranus and Taurus this year as well, nurturing and fostering your individuality and really like going within to find your own perspective on what it is that you need for your body, for your mind, for your soul, for your spirit, for your emotions. And really like taking care to not push what you perceive onto anyone. This is like a fair, people get to make their own choices. And, I think that, it's good and it really actually relieves you of resentment and relieves you of stress to be concerned with what other people are doing with their bodies, with their experience. You just want to be mindful of that and just know that the one size fits all approach, does not work. Like that's not a thing. So, yeah. All right, I'm gonna check to see. I don't think I'm getting any comments, but that's okay. So if you, are here and you want to say hey, let me know. I know I'm a little bit late. I said I was gonna go on at like 5, but I'm gonna take a sip of water. Mm. I was kind of running around and, experiencing like some interference with like getting all my groceries and doing all the stuff. So, yeah, so I'm sorry that I'm late. But, okay, so there are a few other things to connect with this North Node in Pisces, squaring to the North Node in Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius. South Node in Sagittarius has to do with indoctrination. So you really want to maintain your own mind, your own perspective. Neptune in Pisces is a lot about like delusions, escapism. So there are a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of being drawn out into illusions. And so even if you think you're immune to this, I'd like for you to just kind of like look at that, to have some, some space for that. North Node in Gemini is a lot about looking at the next step and the next step and the next step rather than like, what is the rest of my life going to look like? So, yeah. And how can you make your environment better in an accessible way for you as well? That's something else that the North Node in Gemini has to do with. It has to do with communication, polarity, fucking obviously, and has to do with some other things like your environment, trades rather than like PhDs and doctorate degrees and that kind of thing. So, yeah. And then I'm going to look at, so that's one theme that comes up really strong. So as Venus in February moves into Pisces, as Mercury moves into Pisces in March after taking a retrograde station, and I'll go over all of the Mercury retrogrades this year, but as Venus moves into Pisces, Mercury moves into Pisces, that's like February, March. So, really like in that from now until then, I just want for you to keep your wits about you, make sure that you're checking in with yourself, doing what you need to do, to stay centered, doing what you need to do to have your own mind, your own experience, and yeah. So that's one aspect of this, and really just being mindful of what is, you know, deceptive in your environment and what is being put forth right now as a perhaps too good to be true kind of a scenario, because there's lots of those everywhere. And I think that that's something to be really mindful of. And any like savior energy is something I think this year will be very crucial to stay aware of, you know, and not feeding into that, because we are our own saviors. We are our own saviors. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, I think that this also makes for a really potent time for dream work. You know, that's been a primary focus for me this year, is to become sort of like more conscious of like what's going on for me in dream time. I kind of had like the wool pulled out from my third eye or whatever this year. So definitely is something to focus on. I found that like citrus fruits really assist with lucid dreaming and with being able to easily, you know, navigate and move in and out of that space. So that's something that I found. And okay, so in looking at this, so there's that energy where there's like this mutable sort of opposition and square, you know, and that's really highlighting where we do need to be adaptable and flexible, but we also have to listen to our soul there. And that's what Uranus and Taurus is sort of like reminding us, you know, as we come into January. On January 17th, um, January 14th, Uranus is going to station direct. And, you know, this is really like a good time now before that happens to become really clear on like what your own values are, what you sort of like your own, your value, you know, your, you know, to really become, there are some things that we just can't move on, right? So I have a few things like that I am just like not willing to do at this point in my life. I mean, I'm 29, I'm sure more will come along as I age, but, you know, good to become very clear about like what your value is as a person, as an individual, and to really move in the world with that, regardless of like what the story is today. So there's that. So Jupiter and Saturn conjoined on December 21st of this year. I guess that was just a few days ago. Feels like forever ago. um, and so they conjoined at the very first degree of Aquarius. So this is the first time that Jupiter and Saturn have conjoined in air signs in hundreds of years. And this year, with the North Node in Gemini, with the Mercury retrogrades in all of the air signs, you know, this is a time it's like air time, you know. So, of course, like 2021 definitely looks very intense and in a different way than 2020 was. 2020, there was a lot more earth. It was very like, uh, you know, having to really die to the old self. And, you know, it was pretty challenging, I think, for most people. You know, if it was challenging for you or if it was great for you, no judgment. Either way, I think, you know, these things hit different people's charts differently. And I think also, like, if you're in a certain space, then the astrology doesn't even have to matter, like, because you're so integrated, you know? So there are a couple of things like that that I think, you know, 2020 was kind of heavy. And it was also kind of like, you know, I looked at the astrology for, you know, for 2020 and I thought like, wow, an overgrowth of corruption and control before, you know, that sort of phases out. So I think that we'll see a lot of change in 2021. And I think there are plenty of different ways that it can go. So what does Aquarius represent? Aquarius represents a few things. It represents we, the people. the collective, the community of people. I'm not getting any comments, and that's fine if there aren't any, but oh well. So Aquarius represents we the people, the collective, humanity as a whole. So, it can be really easy to get lost in, kind of like forgetting yourself as an individual in the collective experience. And that's not something that you want to do, just putting that out there. That's why Uranus and Taurus is like, hey, wait, don't forget about your value. Uranus also has to do with the people, we the people, and they're going to be squaring each other, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Uranus, well, Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, Aquarius represents we the people. Yep, I'm there. Had so many vivid, weird dreams over the last couple of weeks. Very strange. Wow, interesting. Ooh, that is very interesting, Kelly. I think that's pretty common right now, and I think that it's really good to like kind of be able to discern like is this dream being placed, or is this something that like I'm organically like, is this a communication from my spirit? I would advise not sleeping with technology in the room. That's just like my new, it's a goal. It doesn't always work out for me, but yeah. So in the process of I'm talking about Aquarius. Okay, so I'm trying to keep myself on track. That I have so many thoughts. So Aquarius is we the people, but it's also this sort of like mad science, like Frankensteinian science sort of aspect that we're seeing coming up. And I think that that is one aspect that I personally am going to avoid. Aquarius could be freedom oriented as well. It could be rebellious in nature. And so, yeah, so there's like this like zany, like mad scientist kind of like dark shadow side of Aquarius that has to do with technology. And sort of like there is, if you look into like Ray Kurzweil or even Elon Musk, there is sort of this Aquarian sort of like shadow agenda to like merge human beings with machines. Though I don't know how far that will get. I think people are going to have to just choose their choice with that, and I'm really not sure what the outcome of that will look like. I think there's so many different, that's why I'm saying there's so many kinds of different people, different human beings on this planet. There's so many different kinds of souls. If you want to talk about like aliens, which is also very Aquarian, there's thousands of different types of aliens in human bodies right now. You're looking at one. I'm not an alien, but I am, you know, I just have recently discovered like my own origin. And, I think that that's something that is available to everyone right now, is to sort of discover and remember who they are before this whole experiment began. So something to consider, and you can set your intention to remember. But Aquarius also has to do with, so it has to do with aliens, extraterrestrials, interdimensionals. Aquarius has to do with technology, and obviously that weird like mad scientist that is like laughing his ass off while the rest of the people are like whatever. So there's a lot of different stuff going on with that, and I don't know how far that will get. I'm not positive about that. I do think that there's this sort of like splitting off of like organic and inorganic, sort of, whether you want to say like timelines, or there's like the Great Divide, or like the bifurcation, or the New Earth, or like whatever. Like, there's tons of different ways that this has been described by different spiritual teachers. And I think that the best thing that I could describe is just to imagine, literally imagining the world that you want to see. That's the most important thing right now, because I think all of our lives, well, my life, so I was born in 91 when Uranus and Neptune were in Capricorn, like together. And, I've always felt that this was a rather oppressive or suppressive place to grow up. So, in terms of like the systems and the powers that be or whatever. So, for me, I've always felt like my imagination was sort of being limited by my environment. So this year I've kind of been like, oh, Aquarius is quantum, where, two people can be standing next to each other and have completely different experiences of reality. And that needs to be okay. Like, we have to be able to create space for that and to allow people to have their choice, to be where they are, to believe what they believe or perceive what they perceive, whether, but so I think that, yeah, the divide is going to likely, grow a little bit wider this year. And, we're going to fall out of step with time in this group, and we're going to imagine and create the realm that we would like to be in. So, for me, I would like to be in a world where acceptance for value is currency enough, and where creation creates creation all of the time. And, I've had a couple of breathwork experiences where, you can sort of like feel and hear and smell and sense the trees, talking to you and laughing with you. And that's something as well that I think it's important to consider. So, yeah, that's like, for me, that's like my ideal space. But, I'm just really like blossoming into this, fully using my imagination to its capacity. So the more that you can create this year, because Aquarius is opposing Leo. So Leo is creative, Leo is heart centered. So that's the energy that will be used to balance this out. Aquarius, no offense to all my Aquarians out there, but Aquarius energy is kind of cold. So, for what it's worth, you'll want to sort of like, yeah, like warm yourself up with your own light from the inside. And okay, so let's see. So Jupiter and Saturn conjoined in Aquarius, which is also frequency. So I've been talking about sound healing, and okay, there's a couple of things that I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna give like a warning that if you like get really polarized when it comes to people bringing up conspiratorial information, this is your warning. So whenever like people talk about 5G as like this big, like it's a big conspiracy theory, increased levels of radiation being closer to your energetic field and your body does certainly mess with your energy and your level of health. Like, to me, that's like a straight line. That's like common sense. I don't really care to debate anyone, but that's just like, to me, that's like duh, but um, so you'll maybe, if you want to, you can invest in some EMF protection devices or some Tesla coils, or something of that nature to really give your body the protection and support that it needs. And you don't have to, take that on. It's just one thing that, I would recommend. And so, yeah, thank you. You know, Tesla and Dr. Royal Rife both created both healing sounds and free energy. And so these are two things that we could have access to. Dr. Royal Rife created a frequency to heal cancer, like literally heal it, like cure it. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I think, you can look up on YouTube. Royal Rife has frequencies on YouTube. So, you'll definitely want to look into some of this very accessible and, just easy to find, easy to get for free, even, some of this like frequency information, because it really could help you, even if it's just to lift your mood or to add an increased level of enjoyment into your experience. Or people make fun of essential oils too, right? But you can use essential oils to release emotions and to bring aspects of yourself back into balance, which, like, if there's anything that we've learned from the yoga movement over the last several years, it's that the emotions and the mind absolutely do affect the body. And frequency is all about all of that. And definitely would recommend looking into, ways to, the other thing I'll say with 2021 is that it's really, really good right now to, I'm not right now, like, as in, like, leave your house and, like, hi, Carlithia, good to see you. Okay, so really good to, like, work on detoxifying your body from heavy metals. So you can do some zeolite, you can do an ionic foot bath. I got one for $88 shipped to my house, and that's been really helpful for me. And to do some fasting, I think, like, yeah, like, there is no one size fits all. So you want to look into what could be best for you. So that's one thing that I will say about that. Could be really helpful, um, you know, in terms of the experience of being able to control and manipulate your own frequency at will. Yeah. And Aquarius also has to do with quantum, both quantum of consciousness and quantum computing. So, quantum consciousness is where there's, like, more awareness of the multidimensional self. And quantum computing is this sort of, like, information war that we've been seeing playing out. So, you definitely want to be aware when something is trying to kind of hook into your emotional body and to, sort of, like, use your energetic protection and create a bubble around you. And as well to, that's why we reduce the heavy metals, because the heavy metals pings off of the, frequencies that are being emitted by our technology. That's just, to me, it makes perfect sense. It's common sense, but, like, and I'm not trying to convince anybody, and there's tons of things that you can go read, and, it doesn't make a difference for me whether or not, you ascribe to that. But I have personally experienced an increased level of health in partaking in some of these things, like, detoxifying my own body. I'm going to start a water fast on January 2nd, and that'll be really nice. So Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius, and they're moving forward. Jupiter is going to square Uranus, which stations direct on January 14th, which is, sort of this, like, it's like, where certain things that have been going on in the background sort of make themselves more known. Pieces of the puzzle that we were missing, sort of comes up to the plate to be seen, and certain things that have been going on just become known in the physical. I'll just say that. And then Jupiter is going to square Uranus, and so that's going to be a huge change. I think that's January 17th. Yeah, so that's January 17th when Jupiter and Uranus square off against each other. And that's going to invite in some need to be flexible, adaptable, and to really find yourself at the center of this space. So I want to calculate really fast the midpoint. So there's, hang on. Oh my gosh, of course. Okay, so the midpoint of where Uranus in Taurus and Jupiter and Aquarius are, well, this could be wrong, don't count me on it, but I feel very led to talk about the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries, because that's going to be the way to like sort of navigate this change, like feeling into the depths of your soul and remembering who you are as an individual, in the process of some of the tides that shift and change as they do. So January 17th, Jupiter squares Uranus, and then January 20th, Mars and Uranus connect with each other. So big changes, and that's January 20th. That's Inauguration Day. I think, I'm not saying anything one way or the other in terms of partisanship, but who our president-elect is might not be our sitting president on Inauguration Day. Just, it shouldn't really even concern you, because you are a person that just is not, like, you're not, what's going on that far away does not need to have such a stronghold on your emotional center either way. So just saying that. Okay, so there's that. And okay, so moving forward, Jupiter on February 26th is going to trine over to the north node of the moon in Gemini. So that's going to be a really like nice sort of aspect where, we can really like maybe even get access to some real truth and to put some pieces together. Saturn is going to square Uranus on February 17th, on June 14th, and on December 24th. And so these are the more uncomfortable shifts. Saturn has to do with like control. Saturn has to do with society. Uranus is like we the people and our values. So we're gonna, probably see some still good to tune a lot of this out too in your day to day and sort of like imagine what you want to see and to pour into your creative endeavors. Uranus and Taurus too could also cause some like shifting around of the monetary system. And so, I've been sort of like, of course I don't take my own advice, but I've been kind of like lightly advising people to like, just spread their stuff around. So whether that's like, investing a little bit here into XRP and investing a little bit here into Ethereum, or like investing in like, I don't know, like a gold bar or like whatever, just like here and there and everywhere, kind of just doing your best to, just spread out your assets. I don't know if you can see my little stockpile back there, but I have some food that I've kind of stored away just in case, which I really like don't feel this as strongly as I was feeling it in June of this year. I was like, oh shit, food shortages, and I really feel like if there was going to be a food shortage, there would have been one by now. So perhaps this is all a little bit more tightly controlled than we could imagine. But having said that, still good to be prepared so that nothing can interfere with your personal frequency and you are prepared. Yeah. So let's see, what else? So I talked about the Saturn Uranus square. I talked about the Jupiter Uranus square. Okay, so Jupiter is going to fucking race through Aquarius in a way that's going to be really fast. So that's a fast transit. It goes into Pisces in May, and then it will station direct on June 20th. Go back into Aquarius on July 28th, and then move forward October 18th, and then we'll move into Pisces on December 28th. So when Jupiter moves into Pisces in May, this is going to be really interesting because, I think that this is where the acceleration of consciousness is going to be very available. We'll say that because Pisces is the last sign. It's sort of like this is where like, people will really feel like they're in different dimensions from my perspective, as if they don't already. Um, and that'll be exciting because I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just fascinating. And, I think there is sort of this like having to really lengthen ourselves and do things on a physical level to promote health and to promote well being, but also like really lengthening in the opposite direction and like flexing into some of the more spiritual aspects as well. So definitely really interested to see what that looks like. And, I think that, good to be skeptical of all dogmas this year, especially with the South Node in Sagittarius. You know, Science is like the new religion, and, religion is like the old religion. And there's like lots of different, like, ways of perceiving that have sort of like been set up for people. And I would just love to see people have their own impressions and their own experience within their own impressions. That would be really cool in general. And then to be able to kind of exchange ideas from their different dimensions. I mean, that's a very air concept. And at the beginning, we were talking about how this is a very air time. So, yeah. So, in looking at the Mercury retrogrades this year, January 30th until February 21st, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Aquarius. And so, man, there's going to be a fuck ton of shit in Aquarius. Like, come Aquarius season, there's going to be like Mercury retrograde, and there's going to be Saturn and Jupiter, and there's going to be the Sun and Venus. And, I heard something from a friend of mine that works with me on the astrology app. His name is Zamboni. He is just like some of the people that I work with on there, I swear they're like my best friends, and like I've never met them in person, and I'm just so grateful for them. Sorry. But so in looking at what he said that those planets happen behind the beams of the sun, like that whole conference that's really happening with Aquarius in Aquarius season of this year. And so, I think that there's different perspectives on this, but my perspective is that, the elites, so to speak, have really they're really like putting everything on the table and, showing their hand. And I think that that is sort of like, you know, we're really like seeing it, especially like if we are in fact seeing it. And, I think that it's almost laughable, really. Still good to, even in like that part of February, I'm going to encourage gathering with people in any way that feels right for you in any capacity. And let's see. So, May 30th through June 23rd, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Gemini. So I really think that when Mercury comes onto the North and South node, I think it'll retrograde and then come back onto the North node again. I think that's going to be a really powerful reveal of truth. I think there's a lot of fucking deception out there, and I think it'll be good to get some truth. And also to communicate. It'll be a really good time to speak what's on your heart and on your mind. And September 27th to October 18th, Mercury is going to station retrograde in the sign of Libra. So, this will be a really good time to evaluate, as if the last year and the next few months aren't going to be this like huge evaluation of who's in our lives, the people that are in our lives, our relationships. You really want your people to be on the same page with you about a lot of things, like to have similar values. I think the two dueling values that seem to be, sort of around are like, freedom and safety. These seem to be a very like, there's like a, uh, one aspect of the division really values freedom, and the other aspect of the division really values safety. And I think that those are both fine, but it's really good to get on the same page with who you're around, right? So, um, yeah, so I think that I talked about most of the things that I want to talk about. If you have any questions about this year, let me know. And then otherwise, I'm going to go play Uno with my mama, and that'll be fun. She got it special for us to play tonight, which will be fun. I got this thing. It's pretty cool. Otherwise, I'm probably going to hop off here if nobody has any questions. I know I said a lot. I threw a lot of dates out. Feel, it there's a lot of astrology this year, but I also think that, it's really good to get to a space where it doesn't really matter and like you're not really phased by it as best you can. We have a lot of healing to do. Methinks. So I'm going to wait for about like 3 more minutes. And then if nobody has any questions, I'll hop off here and then this will be up in the group for whoever wants to watch it. Kind of thought about doing some kind of like, bi-weekly Zoom check-in on this group to sort of like talk about how you're doing with, just everything with consciousness or with, uniting yourself with your soul, which I just think is such a huge thing right now. So, and really has been for like the last several years for me is sort of like understanding who my soul is, what I'm looking at, what I'm talking to when I'm going into that space. All right, well, I'll put some frequency helps. Shungite, Dr. Virtual 7 on YouTube. It's amazing. And I'm doing a course. I'm starting it on January 24th. And we'll be looking at like, through the zodiac signs, how you can sort of actualize and, deprogram and just emerge as who the fuck you are, which is a great time to do that. So, yeah. Awesome. All right, y'all. Well, if nobody has any questions, if you need a sliding scale for a session, if you need anything, you let me know and I'll do my best to accommodate you. Oh, excuse me. Take care.